Welcome to Fraction of a Teacher, the podcast where two trainee maths teachers navigate the wild world of teaching, equations, and everything in between. I'm Francis.
And I'm Jen. Join us as we reflect, share stories, and have a laugh about life in the classroom. Whether you're thinking about starting a career in education, a trainee teacher in the thick of it all, or just curious about what it takes to shape young minds, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Hey everyone, it's Jen and Francis. We hope you guys are well. Back for another episode. Francis, how are you, buddy?
Good, thanks, Jen. Hey, everyone. Yeah, no, it's good. It's just like a while since we last recorded. It's lovely to catch up. And actually, it was really lovely. We saw each other in person today back at uni, which was just lovely to see everyone. We've had 2 days, Monday, Tuesday this week, in uni. I'm going to explain why in a moment. So it's been really nice just to catch up and connect with everyone again.
It really has been, actually. It's been really nice to kind of touch base. So we've been in placement for a while, so it's been really nice to get back in and just see some familiar faces and just catch up about how everyone's placement B is going, really. Because I can't believe we're in March.
And we're not even like just in March either. We're like over halfway through March. And I think every time I look up, I realize Easter holidays isn't far away. Then into May, there's some bank holidays, and end of May's half term, and then end of June, we finish our placements. So I think it's suddenly feeling like a year of teacher training sounds like a long time. And then I suppose for me, it feels like now suddenly that end is coming around really quickly. And actually, to think that it's not that long, like 6 months' time, we will be working in our schools as full-time, proper qualified teachers is the plan. So that it's all coming around quickly, isn't it?
It really is. And I think, especially with we got assignments due in for university, we both value the PGCE in terms of the university aspect of things, of having research-led discussions and then having the placement as well side by side. It does create its challenges when you've got assignments due in, lessons to plan. So it definitely feels ramped up. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm with you, but I think we all work at assignments in different ways, and there's definitely, I'm sure the few listeners out there will be able to recognize that sometimes you need a little bit of pressure, a bit of time pressure to really get going. And yeah, so I feel like it's going to be a busy run up to the end of term, but no, it's good. And we knew it was going to be busy, and actually, I think often the busy bits are the best bits once you're into them. But we've got a few things to talk about though, haven't we? Which kind of relate to all of what we've just said. Really, we're going to talk a bit about what we've been doing in uni this week and how that kind of fits into wider uni training.
Definitely, and I think we've talked about the word ITAP a few times, but not gone into any detail about what that means. So I had no idea this even existed before we started the PGC course. So definitely feel like it's a really nice time to kind of jump into that, understand the purpose of it, and a little bit maybe about our experiences. So
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've done is, as always, it's good. I thought it'd be fun to kind of go back and try and understand where did this intensive training and practice, this ITAP, come from? And from doing a bit of research, it's that we're the first year, and they've talked about that on the course, that we're the first year to do ITAPs, these intensive training and practice periods. And effectively, it's a change that the government have pushed into initial teacher training that's meant to be using sort of research-led clinical practice sort of principles into teaching, so that we spend some time looking at theory, and that's why we've been in uni Monday, Tuesday this week, and then go into practice and put that theory into practice in school Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week, to kind of give us an overview of a particular topic and then kind of dive into that. And yeah, they list a whole lot of options in terms of effective modeling, scaffolding, transitions, questions, explanations, feedback, and routines for behavior as sort of government suggested topics for the ITAP, which I suppose reflects pretty much what we've been seeing.
yeah. I think it's interesting because when you talked about all those topics, sometimes it feels like we do a lot of these things without realizing, but that deep, I would say almost like a zoom into something to quite a great depth makes you rethink differently about that. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but I really feel like when you break it down, it's really different. So we've kind of gone back because we're in the middle of a modeling one. We felt like it'd be really helpful to go back to our last ITAP, which was on questioning, and almost do a little bit of peer reflection about maybe the things we've learned, our views of it, and then really thinking about kind of how it's been implemented in our teaching since. because it definitely has, since that week, I've definitely grown through that. Spoiler alert, it helped.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that at the point we're at in the ITAP, it's tricky, and I'm sure listeners will be able to identify with this. We're just settling into placement B school. We've been there a few weeks. We're picking up more teaching load, getting to know people, and in many ways, actually, you just want that to kind of continue to grow, to continue to build those relationships with your class and with the other staff. And I think there's a bit of me that feels ITAP got to go back to uni, back away from teaching most of your classes. You only teach a couple of lessons in that ITAP week. So there's a bit of me that feels like it sort of breaks the routine and the cycle a bit. But you're right. In whilst that does happen, it's also got huge benefits by. It's a bit of a luxury really, because suddenly you're not trying to focus on lots of observations and lots of teaching and real sort of breadth. You can just dive into that one area and really for 5 days enjoy just looking at that, talking about it, thinking about it.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like as we get into our roles as teachers, this is going to be less of an opportunity for us to do so. But also, I think it's really important for people to note that different universities approach ITAPs in different ways. So we might be in uni for 2 days, but not every provider does it in the same manner. So this is our experience based on the university that we're attached to, not necessarily everyone's experience as well. Something I definitely didn't look into when we first started this in terms of the ITAP and what that meant, and how you might be in your flow of teaching or gradually building up your kind of workload, shall we say, and then bang, you're out for a week, 2 days in uni, 3 days at school, mostly observing and doing tasks, to then go right back into teaching. Definitely takes some flexible thinking and working. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. But something that I wish I maybe had spent some more time researching before we started, just to make me really aware. Because the first one was really disruptive for me because I didn't feel overly prepared for it because of my own lack of knowledge, not because I didn't feel like they weren't giving us information. Would you agree with that, Francis? I just felt like it was something I knew was there but didn't have experience of, and now I have experience. I feel like
Yeah, and I think it be fair to say that as it's the first year it's been done, I think there's probably we're probably all learning on this, and it's not something that's sort of really embedded in say the sort of schools understanding of teacher training as well. So, but one thing I really enjoy about this, and I really enjoy it anyway, but is the opportunity to go and observe some other subjects. So I'm looking for this week. I've booked in an opportunity to go and see English and art, which are two subjects I haven't yet seen being taught at my current school,
mm-hmm.
and I love it. Like I think the best lesson perhaps I've ever seen was a PE lesson at my last placement school, and it's just so cool to watch the same sort of principles being applied slightly differently, different context, and so I really enjoy that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how modelling is done in English and in art, and then I enjoy the kind of process afterwards of trying to work out how could I use the cool stuff I saw there in my own teaching of maths, and sometimes that's easier to do than others. But it's yeah, so that's I think one of the really fun things is you've got a bit of a opportunity to go around and do that legitimately, spy on other departments and see what they get up to.
Definitely. So let's talk about, so our last ITAB back in, I'm going to say February time, roughly.
It's a blur. It was February. It was
It
around the
was
time of half term.
was on questioning. So we had Monday and Tuesday at university. Monday was part of our whole PGCE course. So we had history, PE, dance, music, everyone together. And I always loved those days because I realized how much we cross over in terms of doing very similar things, but just in very different ways across every subject, which I love spending that time with peers doing that. And then on Tuesday we're in our subject specific, so we're with math. So then we get a really good catch up with math, and then off we go back to our schools to observe. So our last one was questioning. Francis, what was your initial thoughts when you saw a whole week focused on questioning?
I think there's an element of, don't we all sort of do this all the time? And then when you began to dig into it and start looking at what types of questions do you use when and how might that change depending on the context, the learners, individual learners. And I think it was really a brilliant way of showing the power of questioning. And I think for me, I probably underestimated it and underestimated the impact it would have on the way I teach, because I think forcing you to do a couple of lesson plans that really focused on the questions you asked actually means every time I now I'm thinking through a lesson plan, there's a bit at the back of my head that's like, what questions are you going to ask? How are you going to ask those questions? What kind of questions are you going to use? A hinge question or a closed question? So
Yeah.
I underestimated it as a week of focus on questioning. I don't know what you reckon.
No, I think I was really similar actually. Felt like it was something, again, something that we do without realizing, but I wouldn't have never necessarily paid much attention to in terms of the type of questions. I guess something that in my teaching, I have a really big focus on is this use of reflective questions. So getting my kids to reflect on their learning, reflect on their planning and, that metacognition cycle. So evaluating how they did. So a part of me was quite intrigued about the words like hinge questions, something I never had heard of. And so I think at the very beginning I was like, gosh, do I not ask good questions at all? But then as we went through the week, I realized that we do ask questions. But something I really enjoyed about the week was when our kind of math lead was like, go through your lesson plan and write down your 3 most important questions. And I was like, that was really powerful for me. And then we were reading an article that said, I think I mentioned this before, get the teacher observing you to write down the 10 questions and then go reflect on it and give it back. And I did that in school. It was incredibly powerful for me to read every question that I had asked students that they had a chance to write down, because I do speak fast, and then reflect on it in the cold light of day and then think about what I want to do differently next time. That was something I would definitely use again, because it was really eye-opening to me about this range of questions I use in a lesson.
Yeah, and actually, to a more general point and observations, I found some real benefit in having like focused observations like that. Like in my last placement, I did a bit about a focus on kind of use of language and positive praise and kind of negative language, and it was really I did some observations, and my mentor observed me and like said, okay, you trying to work out where do I praise, where do I provide negative feedback, and do I generally do it to groups and individuals and things. And it was just, I mean, something specific was really, really useful. And I think, again, the questioning, when you got to focus on one area and sometimes even direct quotes of you. Have you ever seen a video of yourself teaching?
Okay, yes, but not teaching. So I've had this multiple times. So I'm quite, I say used to it, it's still uncomfortable. Like, it's never okay to watch this back. I still really struggle to listen to our podcast back sometimes because I don't
Yeah.
like listening to myself. But I feel like that's quite a normal feeling too. But yes, it's very uncomfortable. I have done it. Have you?
No, and I think it slightly terrifies me, but I can see, just thinking what we're saying about like having things written down, I suppose being able to look at and sort of play it back. Actually, I suppose the next level of that is a video. I think it'd be quite a good thing to do at some point. I think it's probably it'll probably expose some things that be slightly uncomfortable, but actually really valuable.
So yeah, I think they're definitely, it's interesting when you do it. But yeah, I would always recommend to somebody because it definitely gives you a different perspective, and you have to walk in it with an objective lens, going, this is not me. If this was somebody else, what would I be saying to that person? And when you are able to start doing that, the embarrassment goes away because you're seeing it as a self-development tool and not a tool to criticize yourself. So you need to take your critical voice out of your head and realize that you are developing through this.
Yeah, and you're right. It's all those principles that you come from good observation in general. I suppose you've just got to be kind on yourself as well.
It's just that easy.
Sorry, I took us way off topic there, but it's just really interesting to. So, do you think it sounds like it's changed the way the ITAP, that focus on questioning has changed the way you use questions? And do you have a sort of favorite? You mentioned about the kind of questions linked to metacognition. Is that where you're one of your sort of favorite ways to use questions? And
Yeah, I tend to use a lot of them so a lot of my plenaries are reflective questions, such as if I'm doing like angles on a parallel line, I might say which one of the rules that we learned about was most tricky for you, and I would give the full rules as an option, and then on my exit ticket go A, B, C, or D. So then at the end of the day, I can then count and know exactly which ones they were struggling with as a group and what they found difficult. And then as I'm reflecting on my lesson, I can then think about where I'd like to go with that next. So I tend to use a lot of reflective questions or scale questions, such as on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you understanding this, what's your confidence level, and then what does a 5 look like if you say you're a 4. So what can you do to get yourself to a 5? So a lot of kind of solution focused positive thinking, because they've been to the lesson. So if somebody says a 1, well, they've taken the information in, they've possibly written, and I hope so, written something down their book. That's
Yeah.
already a one. You can't say you've not learned anything because you can always refer back to that in your book. That's a starting point. So again, cup half full, really enjoy making sure my students leave feeling that there was a gain of some description, even if it's, I wrote something down, miss, and we'll come back to that tomorrow.
I like that. That's your previous skills and career sort of being
Yeah.
applied there. That's nice, and that's not something I've really tried doing in that way. So I need to think about how I could
What is
do a
your
little more of
favorite
that.
kind of questioning?
I really enjoy, I think, the questions that look at depth and kind of, I suppose it links to that kind of mastery in mathematics. I think particularly the ones that kind of connect topics. And I suppose for me, something I've really enjoyed about getting back into maths, having, not really properly looked at maths since, I suppose, kind of A-level early degree a while ago, has been just seeing those links, seeing the way that concepts are linked together and sort of seeing the kind of depth. And I think I feel like identifying lots more of those links every week of teaching, spots in the arse I didn't see before. I'm really enjoying that, and I think therefore for me it's asking pupils, they give an answer and saying, okay, that's a great answer, you're right, but can you tell me a little more about that, or can you explain why? Or I really love my kind of favorite thing at the moment is when pupils give you different solutions to the same, give you different ways of finding the solution to a problem, and I just love it when you're in a class and you've got 3 or 4 different pupils explaining
Mm,
how they found the solution. I think one of the cool things about maths is the way that actually they can all be right, and they may well come up with solutions that are equally valid. You might use them in different instances. Some may be more efficient than others for the way you've asked the questionings, but I really like that. So for me, I think questioning in mathematics and probably in other subjects too, but is a great way of exploring that depth. And I suppose for me, there's also, whilst we can script a lot of that, you can put it in a lesson plan, you can set up some of your slides and your thinking before the lesson. I think there's also a bit of that that needs to be a kind of live response to
mhm,
what people say. So I suppose that's the bit that comes with deliberate practice and experience. I think is the ability to then um, kind of snowball from one question to another and build on an idea, build on a concept, and kind of really interact with the class such that it feels like a kind of conversation and um, more practice to get there. But that I do enjoy that.
yeah, and I think there's this level of, again, I'm going to keep going on about this culture of productive struggle for me is where it's almost really low stakes that you ask questions like that, and because everybody's answering them and it's okay, and normalizing mistakes within mathematics as a way to learn and to grow. I feel like because everyone's, willing to participate, or you're trying to create a culture where everyone's willing to participate, when you ask those questions, the more I feel like you do it, the more the students are going to buy into it. And I've seen that where they buy into it because they're like, well, if Jack and Steven are doing it, I'm going to do it as well, because the nobody kind of hides. So it's like the very low, they call it low stakes, don't they? Where everybody knows you're going to go around the whole room. And that's a really, and you did something the other day, which I really liked, where you showed us your little lesson plan on one side and your seating plan on the other, and it's like laminated so you can cross off names as you go along, so you're coming to every single person. And again, that really feeds into that low stake. So it's not necessarily about the questions you're asking, but it's about making sure that you're addressing the whole room and using that inclusion and using, that as a way to motivate your students to be active learners rather than just passively taking information across, which I do think is one of the biggest issues sometimes, is that transition from passive to active learners who are taking responsibility
Oh,
um,
I
for their learning.
completely agree. And I was listening to a actually Craig Barton podcast the other day, and he was talking about how do you make sure you've got some thinking in the lesson? How do you maximize the thinking that's going on in that lesson, making sure that every pupil is thinking? How do you do that, and how do you use questions? How do you use mini whiteboards? How do you use your interactions with pupils to do that? That's something I've been trying to consider in my lesson planning now. Is where's the point in the lesson, the points in the lesson where pupils can be forced to think, and how do I, in a nice way, force them to think, force them to have to think, but to enjoy that thinking as well, like for it to be productive, beneficial, satisfying thinking, but it may be a bit hard work at points too. So that's definitely, so the thinking bit, how to build thinking into a lesson, is something I'm thinking about quite a bit at the minute. But the other thing we talked a bit about there, about the sort of um, potential sort of apathy. The other thing I showed you a bit of it earlier today is that I felt with one of my classes that we were not, they were just weren't nearly as focused. I don't think they could see why they have to do some practice of what sometimes to them seems either a bit repetitive, a bit dull, a bit beneath them. I've understood the concept. Do I need to do the questions? So, and I don't know if it'll work or not. First lesson was pretty positive, but I showed them a bit of a video, a clip about the British cycling team where they made a whole lot of 1% improvements across everything they did, and that really added up to incredible gains, sort of Olympic gold winning gains. And I suppose that's something that I want to start thinking about in my practice is if we can make little 1% improvements everywhere, and get the
Mm.
kids to begin to buy into the idea of making little improvements, putting in effort actually and seeing results from that. I think that's something that links to that. Why am I asking you these questions? Well, because actually, if we can keep doing this, we're going to make little gains that add up to big gains, kind of compounding gains. Very much like James Clear's Atomic Habits, that concept of accumulating gains. So yeah, that's definitely something there I've been thinking about alongside thinking and
No,
questions.
and I like that because I think sometimes we talk a lot about in math this like aha moment where someone just gets it, and like they've finally understood algebra or trigonometry. But actually, I sometimes feel that math is that consistent effort. It's that building resilience for them, willing to continue to tackle something that they find difficult. And that's where the gains are at. It's not about coming to one lesson and being perfect. It's about coming to every lesson with the right attitude and the right mindset to go, I'm going to keep working at this, because if I don't keep working at this, my homework is always going to be hard. My lessons are always going to be hard. I'm going to continue to struggle. And it's somehow instilling that from extrinsic motivation into their intrinsic motivation. It's somehow transferring that knowledge and responsibility.
You're going to have to explain that.
Gradual release of responsibility over to the students. And something that I think questioning does, if it's done well, is almost offers another perspective. So it's about like when I'm doing up my observation. So I observed art, textiles, and PSHE in my week for questioning. And actually, those different classes gave me perspective of if during my own reflections on lessons that I've not done very well or what I could have improved, it almost think now having done the ITAP, thinking about my questioning is a new avenue of reflection I can take, going, right, okay, so what about my questioning? Was it effective? Could it have been something different? Did I get what I needed to from the students? And I think that's what the ITAP has given me, is a new avenue of reflection when I'm thinking that something's not going stale, but I'm just not sure maybe what went wrong. It's giving me going, right, what was my routines like? Right, what was my modeling like now? What was my questioning like? And I can then start really objectively looking at my own work and going, what do I know? What have I kind of seen? And where could I improve that next time? So I think that's really important for me, and that's kind of my takeaway message from the ITAP for this question.
Definitely, and completely agree. And I think the bit that arguably the ITAP does as part of that is then gives you a little bit of basis of the basic understanding of the underpinning theory that helps you unpick it a bit and gives you maybe a structure to, like we wrote our own guide, sort of based on a bit of theory into what makes good questions, and
Or
actually use that
checklists.
checklist as a against our own questions. Do my questions actually stack up against my own checklist of these that I've written? And I think that kind of thought process has been quite good in just clarifying what are the 8 questions you should be bullet points you should be checking on your checklist for your questions.
But I just feel like it's one of those tools in your toolbox that you can go, if I'm feeling something, not now, not maybe possibly doing this placement, but next year when you're in a classroom and that's your class and there's nobody in the back of the room observing you and you're not on your own, but you're in that room and you're thinking, I'm always going to reflect on my lessons, but in that quiet time, am I going to go, let me pull out that checklist? And just, is that a tool that I could be thinking is relevant right now? Did I ask enough questions? Or did I just monologue a whole 50 minutes
It's
without a break or without really understanding what my students did or did not understand? And I just think, as much as it is a little bit, I'm not going to say disruptive because I don't like that word, because the ITAP isn't it's not meant to be, it's not designed to be disruptive. It's meant to focus us. And I think that focus, as much as I might at the very beginning going, I really want to be back in my school, I'm starting to develop rapport with kids. I know I'm not there for 2 days and I'm not teaching. By the end of the week, I'm like, that was really helpful. I'm now looking at loving questions that alleviate the chance of the student going, I don't know, miss, and going, well, I'm going to ask you a question that you can't say that for. So it's almost like I feel like it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the ITAP where I always end up loving it. But I miss
I'm
school.
with you. Yeah, and that's the funny thing is we did join this to be in schools, but I think sometimes the perspective you get from sitting back outside the school environment for a couple of days to think about something is really really handy, and it's been good fun. Like today, doing a bit of practice modeling, the modeling of maths examples for
And
clarity.
sometimes like
It's
we
been
get a lot of
really good.
yeah, but sometimes we get a lot of feedback, and we get feedback from all angles. We get feedback from university, we get feedback from our mentor, from our teachers that are observing us. It's really nice to take a step back and go back to observing different teachers and learning from them because they are our expert colleagues. They'll have tools in their locker that I only can dream of developing, and they do it so seamlessly. It really inspires me to go continue to develop. And I really like that. And I know that I think as I get more teaching, I'm going to want to try and keep that as much as possible in terms of just even once a month or once a term being able to go observe somebody and just, learn as well from how they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit that it's nice at this stage. And I feel it's such a luxury being able to go and spend time. Just, I mean, we've got a bit of a kind of opportunity to go and pretty much observe any lesson, any teacher within a school. I mean, that's an incredible privilege, and it's really, I really do feel it is a privilege to be in someone's lesson and sort of kind of fly on the wall and see that. But yeah, it's trying to make the most of that and capture those great
Yeah.
bits of good practice, the ideas, the things that you think maybe work for them but wouldn't for you and vice versa. Yeah, and I think it's it's also that kind of reminder that I mean I met plenty of teachers who say, oh, you can come and observe, but it won't be perfect. It won't be, and I'm like, well, no, I don't think that's not the. It's never going to be perfect. I read a quote in a
I was
book
just
I
going
was
to say,
looking at
is
the
there
other
a
day.
quote coming by any
There
chance for
is, there is. Show this is. We'll have to put this on the link. Put a link down. So we picked this book up because I love the title, and it's the title of the book is "Why Everything You Know About Education Is Wrong," and I just loved it. It's kind of disruptive. But there's a great quote in there that says, "Show me a teacher who's I think it's along the lines of satisfied with their teaching, and I'll show you a teacher with low standards." And I think it's all about those professional teachers who don't feel they're perfect, don't feel they're good, and they're fully there. And I suppose even though they've done 20 or 30 years of awesome teaching. So I suppose it's just trying to maintain that attitude that, yeah, we're going to be carrying on learning just with less ITAPs as we go.
I mean,
But
I also have a quote for you, but I love
oh,
your
go
quote.
on.
But I think I might like your quote more than I like my quote, but
Let's see.
I mean, okay. It's the power to question is the basis of human progress.
Wow. Okay, the power to question is
To
the basis of
question
human.
is the base. I mean,
That feels
it's
like,
from yeah,
go
it's
on.
from Gandhi. It's a person who's very wise.
I
But
like
given
that.
that we're talking about ITAPs, I just think the power to question, I think relates for me it's twofold. So one, the power to question us as teachers helps to progress our students. But then if we're asking the right questions, the power to for the students to question us and feel comfortable to do so and be like, but Miss Sir, why is it that? It shows their own progress as well. And I think sometimes it's easier if you're trying to get to a point or if your lesson's not going very well to almost think that question's not helpful. But it's really important to take that time and it help the students to almost foster that explorative nature for them because that's what promotes growth for anybody.
Oh, absolutely. That's made me think of something actually, and I haven't done this. I wonder whether that'd be quite cool to, in a lesson, like ask someone who's observing you to write down the questions you get asked by kids in a lesson, because I really like what you kind of, I suppose we spent the questioning item thinking about the questions we ask pupils, but you've come up with a great point. Like if you flip it and think a bit about what questions the pupil's asking us, because I mean, you can tell a lot. Like you can tell a lot about your relationship with the pupils, about their kind of level of confidence in the concept, their level of confidence in their mathematical ability, and Yeah.
Or lack of questions.
Well, yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, that the chance of them all sitting there thinking they fully understand they got no questions, that's
I
pretty
always
unlikely.
ask what questions do we have rather than do we have any questions. That almost like involves the no, none. I go, what questions do we have?
Oh, I like that.
Because then in my eyes, that alleviates the chance of the no questions.
That's good actually, because whilst I genuinely would welcome questions from pupils, I can sort of say that I'm really keen to have questions. Actually, pupils for a whole host of reasons may not want to give me their questions. So I think anything we can do to invite questions and make pupils comfortable with asking questions that's good news.
And I don't really know if there's a science behind this, but when I ask my reflective questions or what questions do we have, I'm standing in the middle of or the back of the room. I'm never at the front of the room. And I feel like it's something for me about feeling part of a team with the students rather than telling them at the front of a classroom where a teacher will stand. And I'm really mindful
Ooh,
of that. So I don't know if that's a
that
thing or not. I don't really know if there's a psychology behind it, but I always ask it when I'm within and in between students. I feel like it's our voice rather than my voice at the front.
oh, I like that.
I don't,
Wow. Yeah. Okay. There's a load of things there to try. Okay. I really like that idea.
I
But it
just think there's
makes it
yeah.
makes sense in terms of breaking down those potential sort of barriers and yeah, kind of making people comfortable.
But there's a host of things we
Awesome.
could talk about, like do questions about assessment only appear at the end of lessons? Is that too late? And you have to go through a whole nother lesson. There's so much we could delve into this in different angles, but that's the whole point of the ITAP. It's not just about the type of questions we use. It talks about the placement of questions, when we're thinking about, when to question and when not to question
Oh, and
also.
one thing I linked to that sort of yeah, when you're using questions, something that I would love to be better at is use of silence. Us posing a question and just that waiting and how I suppose the challenge I think as the person at the front of the room, that silence feels like an eternity. But actually, how long should you leave it? How long can you leave it? And I've seen that done really well by some expert colleagues and leaving a silence that feels quite long, but actually forces people to fill the silence with some thinking and it's a bit of allowing everyone in the class to kind of process it and catch up rather than just asking a question, hand is raised, going straight to that hand.
Do you feel like we could have maybe a little bit of a little homework task for this?
Go on.
Shall we get the teachers in our classroom, if appropriate, to time us on how long we leave our gaps and like for a student? Because I've got a few students that need longer
Yep.
to answer questions. And actually, I would be really keen to see how long I give a student appropriately.
I like that idea. I think what would be really interesting is that sort of objective evidence of, okay, so you asked the question, you waited 3 seconds, and then you went with the first hand up, versus if you left it 10 seconds, you looked around the room, you made eye contact with most of the pupils, you then made a decision on a cold call, and then got a couple of other answers. Yeah, I suppose there's so much variety you could do within just, yeah, I love that. Thinking about that, yeah, how long? Okay, let's put it on the list of things to report back.
I'm writing it down on my
Yep.
whiteboard.
Those are
I feel like that's my best tool is a mini whiteboard and a pen, like a board pen.
it's the future. We should talk about mini whiteboards a bit more in detail at some point because I'm slowly working to implement with my current classes.
And exit tickets. I feel like exit tickets are my best friend.
I didn't use them at all at my previous school. I never saw them used at my previous school, and I've started using exit tickets, and I so far so good. So not with all the classes I'm teaching, but I'm going to begin to roll it out further. And yeah, actually, yeah, it's another of those things that you're like when you start using it, you're like, oh, well, actually, that was pretty easy, pretty useful. Why didn't I use it earlier? So yeah, that'd be good. It's time actually. Maybe we can note that down. Sort of tools in the classroom, mini whiteboards, extra because I mean actually it links nicely to the questioning. But yeah, maybe that's when we could explore in a little bit of detail. Top tips.
Definitely. I feel like we're going
Wow.
off topic. I feel like this has been really nice to reflect on our ITAP because I did a lot of reflecting on the ITAP right after the ITAP finished because we have a lot to write up for our ITAP. like certain boxes to fill out. I will say there's, when we talk about the ITAP, where there's so many different tasks to do in the day and it gives you a lot of time to do it, you always, top tip for me is always give yourself time and make notes as you go along. Because if you can take a photograph of your notes and upload that, it does make it a lot easier than having to try and type up something into the boxes. That's personally my view. But this, I think this ITAP specifically, I feel like, reflecting on it with you now, I can see the again, like I said about that love-hate relationship with it. I feel a love for it when we're talking like this because I go, wow, okay, yeah. And I think of my lessons recently going, that question was, yeah, I know exactly where that question came from when I observed it there. And so,
Yep.
yeah, I feel like it's a really time well spent. Maybe not feeling it always at the time because it's pressured. We've got assignments, we've got lessons to plan, but now loving it.
I absolutely agree. We've got to remind ourselves of that as we return to school for this week. But
I know.
I think we had one or two final things to talk about today. Well,
Hit me with
actually,
it.
I've got a big one. Are we ready
Tell
for
me
the
it.
finale? Well, when are we going to do the maths jokes? Do we have to do something else first?
Oh my gosh, the math jokes. I'm not even ready for the math jokes. We've had so many comments going, you did one math joke each, and that was it. And I was like, okay, yeah, we probably should do more math jokes.
That is a bit. Well, have you got a have you got a ready maths joke?
I'm gonna rack my brain for a few math jokes I've got. They're, again, they're not wonderful, so be kind when this goes out. I'm sure you have one at the top of your head.
Well, actually, my son told me it today, and I think it was the only one who laughed. My wife and daughters weren't amused. So yeah, I'm lucky. I've got a kind of ready-made one that he kindly handed me. Should I go for it while you dredge up the?
I just think I have to remember how to say it well because it's definitely gonna come out wrong, and I'll probably give the punchline away.
No,
So yeah, can you go first? This is gonna go terribly wrong.
this
This
is
is not my strong point, but
properly
let's go
put you
for
on the
it.
spot here. Um, what did the triangle say to the circle? So the triangle looked at the circle and he says, "You're pointless." I'm not even sure if it's mathematically correct, to be honest. It should probably
Okay,
be
that's a good
talking about
one. Okay,
vertices, but
bear
never
with on
mind.
this one, Francis.
Go for it.
Okay. Did you know that there's three types of people in the world?
Go on.
There are the ones that count, and the ones that can't.
It's like an anti-maths joke.
It's really bad, but I just have these really bad jokes. I'm never gonna be a comedian.
I don't know, it's got some similarities to teaching.
I know.
Okay, I think it's difficult, jokes in the classroom. I don't know if I'm fully there yet with some of my classes. I'm not sure they're ready for maths jokes yet.
No, I'm not that quick-witted. I feel like it doesn't come to my mind when I'm teaching. I'm thinking about other things, and I feel like I play to my strengths, and I don't think that's a strength.
I love it. Know yourself. You've got it. I will like. I'd have laughed if I was there. But awesome. Well, I think on that note, we're probably there. We're so that's it. Well, it's such fun talking again, Jen. Thank you so much, and good luck over the next few days. And as we near the end of term with assignments and stuff, it is busy. So yeah, look after yourself. Thank you so much, everyone, for all the comments and suggestions. And
Yeah.
we've had a couple of guest offers as well. So we're
Oh.
looking ahead at plans over the next couple of weeks. We're going to get together and work out a bit of a kind of medium-term plan as to how we're going to pull all those ideas together to keep yeah keep sort of producing episodes which hopefully people can enjoy. And do let us know if you've got any more ideas.
And we got to 100 listens. Like, that's amazing. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to us. But yeah, no, I completely agree, Francis. We definitely have some exciting stuff coming up. But maybe just letting everybody know for over the next few weeks, we're going to be releasing episodes every other week for the time being, just whilst we are dealing with our assignments and everything as well. We're human. We're trainee teachers. That's how that's going to go for the time being. A little bit more build up to the next episode, but our website is in the making, and we're going to be possibly thinking about doing a blog as well. Some really exciting stuff going on. So yeah, it's all in the works, isn't it, Francis?
As always, lots of promise. No, I think you've summarized it all nicely. Thank you again, Jen, and look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, Francis. Bye, everyone.
Have a lovely week.
thank you for listening to Fraction of a Teacher. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your fellow teachers or friends. New episodes released every Thursday morning at 5 o'clock.
Follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Fraction of a Teacher Podcast for updates, behind the scenes fun, and more content. We would love for you to get in contact with us with your ideas, any questions you have, or things you'd like us to cover. So please email us at fractionoat@gmail.com or message us on social media. Until next time, keep smiling.
And keep solving those problems.